Good evening and welcome to the Greg Tompsett Football Show. Tonight, we are going to look around the NFL, see what happened in this amazing, fantastic Week 15 battle, and see how it affected the Buffalo Bills playoff picture. So we will jump right in and go right to these games that we had here today. Obviously, there's a lot to be able to look at in the setup that we have here. So I'm going to go through a couple of the most impactful ones. Obviously, we saw the Chiefs beat the Browns. This is very much expected. Maybe there was some hope after the Chiefs let teams like the Raiders and the Panthers hang around with them that maybe Jameis could pull some magic. Of course, that did not happen. The Chiefs took care of it, but we will talk about the late Patrick Mahomes ankle injury. So obviously no threat for long term or the playoffs, but it could affect the fact they have two more games in the next 10 days against the Houston Texans on Saturday and then the Pittsburgh Steelers on Christmas Day, Wednesday. So 2 games between now and next Wednesday with a possible high ankle sprain. So we'll see how they treat that, and I'll show you a couple scenarios of why it matters. Another one, again, didn't really matter a lot. The Ravens destroyed the Giants here. The Giants hung around for a little bit, but then the Ravens just kind of pulled away and took control of this game. Didn't affect the Bills, but wacky ending in Commanders Saints. The Commanders had control of this entire game the whole time. They were up 17-0 and let the Saints come back in and end up scoring at the end of the game with 0 on the clock. And then they went for a 2-point conversion to go for the walk-off win and got stuffed. So I respect to them for going for it in that scenario. But obviously didn't it turn out the way that it did. Didn't affect the Bills, but a fun, entertaining game. The Bengals won a game that didn't matter. The Titans actually took a lead early. They are kind of grasping at some stuff later on. I'll show you how unlikely it is for them to be able to get themselves back into it. But in theory, they did get a win. Another one that was expected but happened. The Texans beat the Dolphins, pretty much ending their game. I'll show you the standings here in a moment of why this puts them away pretty well. But the Texans now clinch the AFC South, and the Dolphins are not eliminated, but very, very much on the outside looking in for any chance. Another game that was kind of a pseudo playoff game. The Colts were only 1 game behind the Broncos. If they won, they would have been there at 7-7 and would have knocked the Browns back to 8 and the Broncos back to 8-6 and had the win in hand for the tiebreaker. Instead, the loss puts them at 6-8. The Broncos up at 9-5 with the tiebreaker in hand. This game really flipped on a disaster double pass. Anthony Richardson flipped it to A.D. Mitchell and then dropped back, and A.D. Mitchell went to throw it back to him. And as you see here on the screen, Nick Bitonio then took it and returned it back for a touchdown. It was a really, really ugly game, or ugly play that ended everything there. The reason that it's not all the way done with teams like the Colts and the Dolphins and the Bengals is because the Buccaneers smoked the Chargers. So the Chargers stayed at 8-6. If they went to 9-5, it really would have been done. But at 8-6, they're 2 games up with 3 to go. The Chargers would need to fall apart, but technically that final spot is not all the way done. And again, one other game that really affected the Bills here, and obviously the biggest one from a seeding standpoint, besides the Chiefs and winning to keep the 1 seed, was the Steelers' loss to the Eagles today, dropping them to 10-4. The Steelers have a really tough finish as well remaining. They have games at Baltimore, then home for KC, then home for Cincinnati. I'll explain in a minute. We'll be rooting for the Steelers on Christmas Day. But if they could lose next week to Baltimore, it would make it really easy to root for them on Christmas Day. So I'll explain the scenarios of what we need to see. But the Eagles took care of business for the Bills there and ended things to break that tie there for the Steelers with that 2 seed. And the Bills have sole possession of the 2 seed in the AFC. So let's go to the standings here, and we'll switch over to this tab, and we'll show the setup that we have right now. So obviously, first you have the Chiefs in first place, 2-game lead with 3 games to go. They have to lose 2 out of 3, and the Bills have to win all 3. I'll show you the scenarios of what they need to be able to make that happen. it is possible, especially if it's with Carson Wentz over the next 10 days. That would make a huge difference, but we'll see. I'm not going to count that at this point. The Bills at 11-3 just got the hardest stretch of the season done at 3-1. A lot of people were very fearful about that stretch of KC, San Francisco, the Rams, and Detroit. They finished that 3-1. Huge achievement to be able to beat, obviously, the two Super Bowl teams last year, plus the NFC Championship runner-up, the AFC number 1 seed, the NFC number 1 seed, wins over those teams. This is a huge leg up and showing the capability of the Bills' ability to beat those teams. You see what that does. Their strength of schedule, 5-10, the best out of any of the top 4 teams. Their strength of victory, the best out of any of the top 4 teams. Everybody besides Baltimore, who also has a very good record because their division is so good. So the Steelers are there in the 3rd seed, 10-4. They have a similar tied record for us in the conference, so that's another one there. We didn't play each other, so some weird tiebreakers that would come down to strength of schedule, strength of victory. Because their losses have been in the NFC, we need to stay ahead of them. We don't want to get into tiebreakers with them. They have some things a little bit ahead of us because some of our losses were with the Ravens and the Texans, so we want to stay away from those kind of tiebreakers with them. The Texans, again, pretty locked into that 4 seed, but the Steelers loss did give them a chance here. If the Texans can finish strong, they have a chance to be able to sneak up into that 3 seed territory. Expecting the Bills to lose multiple games to the Patriots and Jets doesn't sound likely. So, I don't expect that to be the case here. But the Texans do control their own destiny because they play at KC, then they play home for Baltimore, and then at Tennessee. They got to be able to win those games. If they win them, that they can take care of whatever they want to and get themselves up to a 3 seed and possibly sneak ahead of Pittsburgh in that situation. Baltimore, obviously, playing well against the Giants today, looking pretty solid for that 5 seed, but they have a chance to be able to take the division from Pittsburgh. The way that they're set up now, Pittsburgh obviously has some tough games. The Ravens play home for Pittsburgh, at Houston, home for Cleveland. So the Cleveland game seems like a pretty easy win, but tougher games with Pittsburgh and Houston. If they win those, they pull Pittsburgh back down. They get that they level out that earlier loss to Pittsburgh, and would pull things back to where some of those other tiebreakers would come into play. So we'd have to see how those ones would play out. But they have a scenario where they could take the division back and be able to control it in the spot that they're in now. The Broncos, again, 9-5, looking really good. Not locked into a playoff spot, but they would have to lose their games to be able to fall out of it. The Broncos are in a position where their final games are at the Chargers, at the Bengals, home for the Chiefs. So tough games. So that's, again, why the Bengals and the Dolphins and the Colts are not out of it, even though they're 2 back with 3 to go. That's not great. The Broncos have a tough final schedule here, so it's not a gimme to be able to do that. And the other team that's their 1 game even further back, so closer to the Broncos, is the Chargers. They play the Broncos next week, so a huge game for that final of who is the 6th seed and who's the 7th seed will be pretty much decided by that final game. But then the Chargers finish at New England, at the Raiders. So should be 2 wins. They feel pretty good to be able to take care of that there. So it's the Broncos who have the little bit tougher stretch with their schedule here. But again, with a 2-game lead with 3 to go and the Chargers playing the Raiders and the Patriots, I really think it's pretty unlikely for them to fall apart. You would need the Broncos to either lose out all 3 or the Chargers to lose to the Broncos plus another game and the Colts or Dolphins or Bengals to win out the rest of their games to be able to go. But the fun part is, let's take a look at this playoff simulator that shows a little bit of where all the games lie. So this is a scenario where right now I'm showing the Bills as the 1 seed, the Chiefs as the 2 seed, the Steelers as the 3 seed, the Texans as the 4, Broncos 5, Ravens 6, Chargers 7. This doesn't take anything all that crazy. I kind of went through and initially just put in who the Vegas favorite was in every game. So no crazy upsets, no wacky games or anything crazy. But the only scenario that I let play out is, what if Patrick Mahomes does have a high ankle sprain? Again, I am not even considering the fact that he might miss any playoff time. That's not going to be the case. He's going to be totally fine. but he might be to where they need to be safe over the next 10 days. Well, over the next 10 days, I don't think this Chiefs roster with Carson Wentz as the quarterback is going to beat the Texans in this game on Saturday. So just 6 days from now, and then flip around only 4 days after that, they would play the Steelers on Christmas Day. If they lose those two games, again, tough games to Houston and to Pittsburgh, that would put the Bills in this position here to be able to be the 1 seed and to get the bye week. There's some other games here. Baltimore could move up to the 5 seed or 6 seed, depending on who wins that Houston game. That's a tough game. I could see Baltimore winning that. That would move them up to the 5 seed. You would have a couple other, interesting scenarios to be some tough games that come into play here. But overall, it's a realistic possibility. I think that because the Broncos, again, are going to be pretty locked into their spot, they can't win a division. They're also good enough that they're not going to fall out of it. I don't think there's any realistic scenario they're winning in Week 18. So the Bills would have to have that locked up beforehand, before going into Week 18, to be able to make that a reality. And I think that the only realistic scenario is that you have the Chiefs have to rest Mahomes because of this high ankle sprain. Again, if that's what it turns out to be, where then they would have to play Carson Wentz. You would have the likely, or a diminished Patrick Mahomes, where they try to play him, but he's not his normal self. And then they need to protect him from himself, and the Texans win and the Steelers win those two games. Now the tiebreaker against the Bills comes into play. The Bills still need to take care of business. It's no guarantee with the Patriots and the Jets. They still have to show up and play. Those are two teams still competing. They were playing tough. The Jets did win today. It took them late to beat the Jaguars. The Patriots got smoked pretty good by the Cardinals, so I don't think they're going to lose those games. They'll be favored pretty heavily in both games, but they still have to show up and take care of business. But this shows at least a realistic or semi-realistic scenario of where the Bills still could be the 1 seed to be able to go through and take care of that. So we'll see how that turns out, what it turns into. I know there's some questions waiting on what the injury to TJ Watt is and how that's going to affect it, because that's almost as impactful, not quite as Patrick Mahomes, but pretty close to that level, to have the Steelers have any chance of things. So again, if it just stays today, let's assume that nothing really changes and all the teams that are supposed to win out the way they're supposed to. Well, right now you would have the opening game. The Bills would play the play the Chargers. We would host the Chargers in Buffalo. Pittsburgh would host Denver. Houston would host Baltimore. So let's assume the favorites win those games. The Bills beat the Chargers. The Steelers beat the Broncos. And I would say the Ravens would be favored to beat the Texans. That would mean then that the lowest remaining seed would be the Ravens, who would go to play Kansas City, and Buffalo would host Pittsburgh in the division round. And if the Bills beat the Steelers, they would play the winner of Chiefs-Ravens. So that's the way it would hold if just all the teams that are supposed to win continue to win, and those tiebreakers hold out the way that they are right now, which I don't think sounds too bad. And I think there's a non-zero chance that the Bills could still get the 1 seed and get the really valuable bye, get some of these defensive players back healthy, let whatever Matt Milano's groin situation is, Rasul Douglas's knee, both Damar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp at safety, let all these guys get healthy, get a full week off, plus maybe not even be able to have to go full go Week 18 against the Patriots. Really good chance we could get this team really healthy and ready to go into the playoffs in the best shape they've been in a long, long time. So, it's a lot of things still to watch. We'll check out some of the things next week, some of the top games to be able to watch out for that we want to check. Obviously, we'll watch that Saturday. Is going to be really, really big because you have the Wednesday teams flip-flop the previous Saturday. So Saturday is going to be Texans at the Chiefs and Steelers against the Ravens. Really impactful day for the Bills, watching those 4 AFC teams battling. And then they flip-flop on the Wednesday, where then the Chiefs play the Steelers and the Texans play the Ravens. So those 4 teams we get to watch, in isolated spots 2 days in a row on Saturday, then the following Wednesday. So really good scouting, really good insight to be able to watch teams that were for sure going to play those teams in the playoffs, probably 2 of them on our way, if not more, to be able to get ready. So we'll watch that Thursday night. We get Broncos Chargers. So a really good AFC slate with isolated games we get to watch ahead of time. Literally the other 6 playoff teams right now, all in isolated single window games where we get to watch them and get ready for those teams in the playoffs. And then the Bills are currently 14-point favorites over the Patriots. But it's our first game against Drake May. So that's going to be kind of fun as well. I'm excited to watch a couple of his games here because, I've seen clips and I've watched some games, but I haven't watched a lot of isolated Patriots games. They're pretty terrible. I don't have a reason to watch all of their games all the way through. I watch clips and snippets here. So this week I'm going to watch multiple of their games from start to finish and get a little bit of that prep ready. So looking forward to that. Check out Aaron and I will have some of our Patriots friends. You guys know Evan and Mark and the guys that we always have on. We'll be hanging out with them, getting ready for this Patriots game. Make sure I can't wait to check out Eric and Anthony's film room breakdown from Bills Lions today. It's just an awesome game. If you haven't had a chance yet, if you're listening to this, make sure you go over there. Check out Aaron and I having fun on that post-game show. Amazing, ridiculous 48-42 game. Make sure you go and check that out. It's going to be a lot of fun. But on behalf of everybody here at Cover One, this is a great season, a great fun run. Doing shows like this, just helping you see where the playoff picture falls and some of the recaps and previews I did earlier this season. Help me out. Give me a like, a rating, a review, wherever you're listening to this. Hit that subscribe button to help me build up some of this base here. Give me a comment in the chat. Help out the algorithm. I appreciate you guys very, very much. But on behalf of everybody here at Cover One, this has been great. You guys have been awesome in the chat, and we are out.